Thank you, thank you. I know everybody's getting tired, so I'm going to talk about a couple of quick things here, and then I'm going to ask a friend of mine to join me on stage. So here's what I wanted to talk about. Singapore was built by innovation, but we need to do more going forward. So instead of talking about government programs or government initiatives, what I'd like to talk about is let's just continue to raise the bar and see what bigger and more difficult problems we can work on. So here's a couple of the previous challenges. I'm sure everybody understands. These were really important national problems, and Singapore led with innovation, solved difficult problems, thought about what it took, and these became foundations for companies, and lots of other countries around the world looked to Singapore. Now what we're looking at is where do we go from here with innovation? On the one hand, you can think about it as productivity and improving what went on before, and a lot of people spend time working on that. It is not our goal as SG Innovate, which DPMTO called out this morning, to work on that. It is our goal to work with people that would like to be on the other side of the spectrum. How do we do things that are different, things that are exponential, things that change what's already in place? So innovation is great, and a lot of people talk about innovation. You think of it as productivity, you think of it as invention. We want to be on the invention side. That's where economic value comes from. These things are coming around the corner. There's no way to stop them. They are inevitable. So there's aging population, there's resource constraint, there's urban density. It affects Singapore and it affects every other country around the world. Those are the things that we'd like to be trying to work on. So here's some of the future challenges that we're thinking about. Things that involve important national, international, global priorities. And these challenges take important breakthroughs and big changes. And they require some risk. And they require us to do things that we're not comfortable doing. So our challenge is not the tech. It's not the science. It's really the mindset. Are we willing to do things that we don't know how to do, and things that will almost certainly not work the first time, or the second or the third, but we improve? So this is what we're trying to think about. Who wants to work on some of these difficult things? And our goal is to work with men and women that want to go from risk avoidance to risk acceptance, knowing that things may not work out, going into it knowing that things will break, and knowing that we'll have to change and adapt. But that's how great things are achieved. That's what sends people into new areas and creates new companies and creates economic wealth. So the simple way that I look at this is it doesn't matter, and I always argue against the idea that Singapore is not big enough or the market is not big enough. So anything that we choose to do, we can do. We have the resources with money, with education, with startups, with corporates, and certainly with the support of government. So anything that we choose to do, we can. It is not a limitation unless we place it on ourselves. So my simple message as part of the Slush event is we have to think bigger. We have to be more aggressive. We have to think more bravely. And so that's part of what we're trying to do, is work with entrepreneurs, men and women that want to try and change things. So with that in mind, we'd love to see how we can be a part of anything that involves important, difficult, such as machine learning, computer vision, autonomous vehicles. And speaking of autonomous vehicles and doing difficult things, I wanted to invite my friend, investor, and entrepreneur, Ian Go, to join me here. We haven't talked about what we're going to say. We haven't talked about what we're going to do. But we wanted, since we're both standing backstage, just to chat about this for a little bit. So can you welcome Ian up on the stage? Come on up and we'll talk for a second here. Come on up, Ian. All right. Yeah, we're going to make it up as we go. So the whole idea here is Ian has built a company. Hey, Marcelo.
I'm my panelist. Okay. Take a seat.
So what we're trying to do is we have people in research institutes, we have people in universities, we have entrepreneurs and investors, people like Ian that put money to work, people like Marcelo that build autonomous vehicles. But the question for Singapore is not whether we have those assets. The question is, what do we do with those assets? The question is, are we willing to take some risk? Are we willing to put autonomous vehicles into more road surface? Are we willing to try things? So Ian, as you look at some of the opportunities around Singapore, there's no lack of what we could do. There's no lack of what we must do. So what is it that we can do to try and encourage more people to take those risks and build companies like you did?
That's a good question. Okay, my mic is on. So I'll confess, I'm a Singaporean. So there's not many of us above the age of 40 who have been schooled in this idea that you should take risks. I think anybody above the age of 40, from my generation, you had to be a doctor, lawyer, accountant. And I'm so excited that the people below the age of 40, and we're seeing that, don't think like us anymore. And I always say that the path to success, the prerequisite of success is failure. A lot of people say, failure is part of the march to success. If we don't fail, we're not going to succeed. So fear of failure is a fear of success. And Singaporeans are afraid of failure, absolutely, because we've been schooled in this idea that we have no margin for error, right from the very beginning, 1965. And I'm here to tell you that's absolutely not the case, that we must invest into failure so that we need to learn how to succeed. And so I'm very excited that, folks from around the world are supporting us. And I do a venture capital fund. We're doing Series A. We've got 90 million. We've done 12 companies. And I'm here to dispel the myth that Singaporeans are not innovative.
So one thing that's never good to do is to disagree with somebody like Ian, especially on stage, but I'll take the risk of doing it in one way, which is I don't like to talk about failure because to me, nobody sets out to fail. But what is good to talk about is whatever we're going to do that's different almost certainly won't work first time. You built a company, you know that the things that you tried, you learned and you changed and you improved. I think if collectively we can get over this idea of it's okay to fail, because we don't want people to fail, we do want people to learn, we do want people to change, we do want people to improve. Whereas I think sometimes this idea of failure, and we try and make it okay by saying fail fast, but the idea I think that we both agree on is let's try something, and if it didn't go where you wanted it to go, adjust, right?
So I'll clarify. I hate failure, right? Nobody likes failure. But if you're not doing something that has a high risk of failure, you're not pushing the envelope. And I think that for the longest time, Singapore's taken the safe bet. So let's do something different.
And I think the important thing here is incremental. If we know what we're trying to do and we can measure it, then it's pretty incremental. If we know we have to solve healthcare in a new way because people cannot go to the GP clinic for the next 20 years, what do we have to do? It means more sensors, it means more analytics, it means more remote healthcare, and those things are going to be amazing and they're going to be inevitable. But there's also going to be bumps. There will be something with the data. There will be something with someone that's not healed properly. There's going to be a problem. The question is, can we avoid that and wait for it to be perfect? Probably not. And I'm sure, as Marcelo will highlight, autonomous vehicles have fewer accidents than humans, but we're okay being next to each other on the BKE and the PIE as humans, but we're not okay to be next to each other with an autonomous vehicle. At some point in time, we just have to deal with that and move on. So the number one message from me today is, please, let's try and do something really important because Singapore deserves to do something important. Has the people, has the assets, has the capability. All we need to do is to say, let's try and work on something that the entire world cares about, not something that's limited only to Singapore. So with that in mind, I'll hand over to Ian and Marcelo. Thank you.
Hey, I think